Evil, narcissistic sister tries seducing my fiancé just before the wedding to sabotage our relationship, gets caught on camera, and ends up disowned by our parents. Hey everyone! I've been lurking here for ages, reading countless stories about toxic relatives and jaw-dropping wedding drama. I never thought I'd find myself sharing my own harrowing tale, yet here we are. This is both a form of therapy for me and, hopefully, a cautionary account for anyone else dealing with a sibling who can't stand seeing you happy. Strap in, it's lengthy and tense, but I need to tell the whole story. I grew up with my parents and my older sister, Ari. From the moment we were kids, my parents praised her like she could do no wrong. They talked endlessly about her looks, her charm, and her unstoppable potential. Ari adored the attention, soaking it up at my expense. Meanwhile, I was the quieter sibling, more interested in studying and keeping out of the spotlight. My parents weren't outright cruel to me, but it was clear who they favored. Ari got compliments for the smallest achievements, while mine were often brushed aside. When she became a cheerleader in high school, the house practically revolved around her schedule. If I got a small scholarship, I'd hear a quick, "good job," before the conversation switched back to Ari's next big thing. She thrived on this dynamic. I learned to live with it. Even back then, I sensed Ari resented any success I did have. She'd make snide comments or remind me how she was considered prettier, more social, or more interesting. It stung, but I tried to keep our relationship civil, hoping maturity would smooth out her rough edges. Little did I know she'd only grow more brazen as we became adults. After high school, Ari enrolled in a decent college. Our parents sang her praises non-stop, convinced she'd have an extraordinary future. A few months in, though, she dropped a bombshell. She was leaving school. She'd met a wealthy older guy, decided she didn't need a degree, and left college without a second thought. My parents were disappointed for all of 5 minutes, until that wealthy boyfriend started buying them lavish gifts. Then they magically understood Ari's choice. Ari married him in a quick courthouse ceremony, flaunting a fancy ring on social media, showing off designer handbags, and traveling to luxury resorts. It all came to a dramatic end about a year later when he divorced her, apparently fed up with her endless spending and dramatic outbursts. She returned home, broke, humiliated, and filled with anger. My parents, feeling sorry for her, let her move back in. They never pushed her to get a job or finish her education. Meanwhile, I was focused on my own path. I'd graduated college, found a decent position in my field, and moved into a small apartment. Ari, forced to watch me stand on my own feet while she struggled, grew even more resentful, but she still saw herself as superior. My parents had ingrained that in her from day one. A few years into my job, I met Leo at a small industry event. He was warm, funny, and shared my geeky interests like sci-fi series, board games, and cat videos. After a string of forgettable dates in my life, finding Leo felt like winning the relationship lottery. We grew close, and before long I knew this was the man I wanted to spend my life with, but I dreaded introducing him to my family, especially Ari. I'd learned from experience that whenever I had something good going, Ari would try to spoil it or claim it for herself. Yet Leo wanted to be respectful and meet my parents in person, so I eventually relented. I tried to prepare him, mentioning that my sister could be, well, overbearing. Leo just smiled and said, "I can handle difficult people." He had no clue how far she'd go. We arranged a casual dinner at my parents' house. The plan was just my mom, my dad, me, and Leo, knowing Ari lived there too, though we didn't expect her to hijack the evening. Of course, the moment we arrived, she made her presence known. She dressed to the nines, her hair newly styled, wearing more makeup than usual. She sashayed over to Leo, shaking his hand with a megawatt smile. Throughout dinner, Ari monopolized his attention. She insisted on sitting next to him, asked him endless questions about his job, and then launched into a spiel about her tough life post-divorce. My parents occasionally glanced at me, looking uncomfortable, but not stepping in to curb her behavior. Leo was polite, but I could tell he was put off by Ari's pushiness. After dessert, she tried to show him old family photo albums, pulling him into the living room while I helped my mom in the kitchen. By the time we left, Ari had coaxed Leo into calling her phone so she could save his number. He thought nothing of it, but I knew it was her way of ensuring direct access to him. That was my first red flag of many. Days after the dinner, Ari began texting Leo. She started with silly cat videos. She knew he loved cats, so he replied casually, not wanting to be rude. Then the tone shifted. She'd ask how his day was, or claim she felt lonely at odd hours like midnight or 3 a.m. Leo, unsure how to handle it without igniting a family fight, tried to respond minimally or ignore her calls, but Ari became persistent, calling again and again. When I finally checked his phone one morning, I saw multiple missed calls from her after midnight. Furious, I confronted him. Why haven't you blocked her? He admitted he didn't want to stir up drama between me and my family, so he tried to be nice. The next time she called at 1 a.m., I answered, and she hung up the second she realized it was me. I texted her from Leo's phone, stating that her contact was inappropriate and had to stop. To my relief, she actually quit for a bit. I hoped maybe she'd gotten the message, though a nagging voice in my head said otherwise. A few months later, Leo proposed to me during a weekend getaway. He found a cozy spot under the stars, said heartfelt words, and offered me a ring I loved. I said yes instantly. We announced our engagement on social media, and while my parents sounded excited on the phone, Ari's reaction was muted. Just a one-word congrats online. Then Leo noticed she was going through his older posts, some from years before we met, leaving weird comments like, "Wish I'd been there," and "Look at you having fun." She also began sending him DMs again, "Just checking in," "Miss our talks," nonsense like that. He shared each message with me. I confronted Ari, who claimed she was just being friendly. When I called her out firmly, she burst into tears and ran to our mother, wailing that I was harassing her. My mother then called me, begging me to cut Ari some slack, since her divorce had left her fragile. I stood my ground, telling my mom that if Ari didn't stop, I'd reduce contact with the entire family. My parents were startled, but still did nothing concrete. Leo and I got busy planning the wedding. We chose a picturesque lakefront venue and organized a moderate ceremony. I wanted a day that felt intimate, but still had room for extended relatives and close friends. Despite everything, I debated whether to invite Ari. My parents pressured me to keep the peace, so I relented, but I privately warned the venue's security that my sister could be a potential disturbance. They agreed to keep an eye on things if needed. Strangely, Ari went quiet during the months leading up to the ceremony. She didn't volunteer to help, and she wasn't blowing up Leo's phone. My parents took this as a good sign, but I had a lingering sense of dread. She never gave up easily. On the wedding morning, everything felt hectic but normal. Hair, makeup, groomsmen, bridesmaids bustling around. Leo and I were supposed to have a first look photo session before the ceremony. However, about an hour before start time, one of Leo's friends sprinted into my suite, nearly out of breath. He said, "Come quick and bring your parents." That was all I needed to hear to know something terrible had happened. We rushed to the groomsmen's suite and found Leo shirtless, slumped on a couch, barely coherent. A few of his friends hovered around him, visibly upset. One explained that Ari had come in with a special drink, claiming it was an herbal concoction to soothe wedding jitters. She pestered Leo until he sipped it. Almost immediately, he felt dizzy. He managed to send a scrambled text to his friend, something like, "Help me, Ari gave me a weird drink." By the time the friend arrived, Leo was in no condition to move, and Ari, half undressed, was on top of him, pressing herself against him, while he feebly tried to push her away. Thankfully, the friend had the presence of mind to record a short video on his phone. In it, you could see Leo's eyes fluttering, his speech slurred, and Ari practically forcing herself on him. She claimed it was consensual, and that they'd both agreed to a pre-wedding fling. Obviously, it was a lie. My parents showed up and my mother demanded an explanation. Ari kept insisting Leo was the instigator, but the friend played the short video. Seeing the evidence made my mother snap. She slapped Ari for the first time in her life. My dad called security, who dragged Ari out while she screamed that we'd all set her up. A doctor at the venue confirmed that Leo had ingested a sedative. Thankfully, he only had a little, or the situation could have been far worse. We delayed the wedding for about 2 hours. Leo was shaky, but once he'd rested and cleared his head a bit, he insisted we go through with it. "I won't let Ari rob us of this day," he told me, still looking a little pale. The groomsmen helped him get dressed and steady on his feet. I was on an emotional roller coaster, terrified, furious, relieved he was alive and safe. At the altar, I could see how drained he was, but his eyes never left mine. When he gave his vows, he added, "I promise to protect our love from anyone who tries to destroy it." I nearly sobbed hearing that. We exchanged rings, officially becoming husband and wife, a union forged under the most horrific circumstances. The reception felt subdued, yet everyone did their best to celebrate. A handful of guests noticed something was off, but we only gave a few the real story. Leo and I left for a short honeymoon. Even during our trip, I struggled to relax, replaying the scene of him drugged and Ari draping herself over him. If his friend hadn't recorded it, Ari might have spun a vile story about Leo cheating or attacking her. The what-ifs kept me awake at night. When we got home, my parents came over to apologize profusely. My father, never one to show much emotion, broke down saying he couldn't believe his daughter would do something so vile. My mother admitted they'd enabled Ari for years, never holding her accountable. They'd already kicked her out of their house and cut her off financially. "We should have listened to you earlier," my father said, wringing his hands. Leo accepted their apology graciously, but I could see the lingering heartbreak in his eyes. Unsurprisingly, Ari tried telling people she'd been set up. She reached out to extended relatives with a sob story about how Leo and I framed her, but the friend's video made her claims crumble fast. A few relatives actually blocked her on social media. She tried threatening my parents with legal action, claiming they had no right to evict her, but she had no legal footing. Rumor has it she bounced between couches, ranting that I stole Leo from her. Leo and I blocked her on every platform. My parents agreed to inform me if Ari ever tried to contact them again, but I asked them not to share any details about my life. I didn't want her to know where we lived or how to find us. They were so appalled by her behavior that they fully complied. Leo and I slowly adjusted to married life. Despite the trauma, or maybe because of it, our bond strengthened. We sought counseling to deal with the nightmares and the constant replay of that horrible scene. The therapist reassured us that while this was a severe betrayal, our open communication and genuine love gave us a strong foundation for healing. My parents also wrestled with guilt. They confided that they wished they'd seen Ari's manipulative streak sooner, but it was hard to break the pattern of coddling her. I didn't want to add to their remorse, but it was clear the entire family dynamic had been flawed for years. If there's a silver lining, it's that they finally realized the extent of Ari's cruelty. Some extended relatives have asked if I'll ever patch things up with Ari. My answer is a firm no. She tried to drug my husband on our wedding day and stage a fake affair. There's no going back from that. Even if she begged for forgiveness, I wouldn't feel safe around her. It's painful to accept that my sister is effectively out of my life, but a person who commits that level of betrayal is dangerous. Leo and I found a new apartment with a secure entrance, letting the staff know not to admit her if she ever shows up. I hate feeling like I need to protect myself from my own sibling, but that's how far she drove this situation. I sometimes grieve the idea of a normal sisterly bond, but Ari's actions shattered that possibility forever. Months have passed. We've settled into a quieter routine, focusing on things we love, game nights, cooking experiments, our rescue cat's antics. We still feel echoes of anxiety if something reminds us of that day, but overall we're doing well. Our families know the story by now, and those who doubted it changed their tune after seeing the video. My parents remain apologetic, trying to support Leo and me in any way they can. They've gone no contact with Ari themselves. I see it's painful for them to lose contact with their oldest child, but they also understand they can't ignore what she did. Sometimes my mom tears up when she mentions Ari, but she never defends her anymore. If there's any takeaway here, it's that family isn't automatically good. If you sense a sibling or relative is deeply resentful, manipulative, or even dangerous, trust those instincts. Don't let guilt or denial stop you from protecting yourself and the people you love. I almost uninvited Ari from my wedding, but caved under pressure to keep the peace. I wish I'd stuck to my gut. Maybe Leo wouldn't have been drugged. Still, I can't change the past. Another lesson is that enabling behavior only makes a toxic person worse. My parents never held Ari accountable, so she escalated her antics. By the time they saw the truth, it was almost too late. If you're a parent, please realize that favoritism and blind indulgence can create monstrous entitlement. My older sister Ari nearly destroyed my wedding, and could have ruined my husband's life, because she couldn't stand to see me happy. Thanks to a friend's quick recording, we exposed her lie. Security threw her out and my parents finally cut her off. Leo and I still tied the knot, though we had to delay the ceremony. In the end, we walked away shaken but determined not to let her poison our future. I'm posting this in hopes it might resonate with anyone dealing with a sibling's extreme jealousy. You deserve to celebrate your milestones without fear of sabotage. Family shouldn't make you feel unsafe on your happiest day. If they do, it's okay to draw a firm line, even if it means cutting them out. Leo and I stand by our choice. No further contact with Ari, ever. We have our life, our marriage, and a peace she can't touch anymore.